Israel's government says it'll boycott a leading daily newspaper, the Haaretz, and won't place any government ads in its pages or on its website. The left-leaning paper has been fiercely critical of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, his coalition government, and its war in Gaza. Israel's communications minister says his proposal against the paper has been unanimously approved by other ministers. Now, Jodie Ginsberg is the president of the Committee to Protect Journalists. It's an independent, non-profit organisation that promotes press freedom worldwide. Jodie, welcome. Now, to give some context here, this move follows a speech at a Haaretz conference in London that the publisher Amos Shonkin had to clarify later. Now, in that speech, he said the Netanyahu government doesn't care about imposing a cruel apartheid regime on the Palestinian population. It dismisses the costs of both sides for defending the settlements while fighting the Palestinian freedom fighters that Israel calls terrorists. Now, he later clarified to say he had not meant to refer to Hamas as suggested by the Israeli government. What did you make of the comment and also his clarification of it?
Well, Haaretz has been one of the very few Israeli news outlets that has reported the war in full. We've seen a high degree of self-censorship from Israeli news outlets. And so it's deeply alarming that the government has taken this step. It has said that obviously it's doing this in response to those specific remarks, but unfortunately this is a pattern that we've seen from Israel in which it's systematically sought to silence independent and critical voices reporting on the war.
What's your reaction then to this boycott? Has it come as a surprise to you?
It's not a surprise. The government indicated it might do this a few weeks ago, but it is disappointing. It's really important, particularly at wartime, that we have free, independent and pluralistic media. We know that in wartime, both sides strive to control the narrative, and that's why it's really important that we have as many news outlets as possible reporting on the situation. Haaretz is the country's oldest newspaper. It's highly respected internationally. And this is yet another attempt by Israel to limit the amount of information going out to Israelis, but also the world more broadly about what's happening inside Gaza and the West Bank.
Tell us a bit more about, how you would describe Haaretz's coverage of the war in Gaza, and has it been fair?
It's been critical of the government's conduct of the war. It's also one of the few, as I say, publications that's trying to give a sense of what's happening inside Gaza. As the Israeli journalist and columnist Gideon Levy has said repeatedly, one of the challenges inside Israel is that very few news outlets are actually reporting the impact of the war in full. They're tending to report on the victories of the army. They're tending to focus very much on the Israeli side, not on the impact on Gazans, on Palestinians. And so people inside Israel are not getting a full picture of the war. And that's something that Haaretz has really striven to provide over the past 13 months.
And Haaretz has responded to this, saying that the government is trying to boycott Haaretz in the hope that it can silence us and that we are not deterred by the threats made by Netanyahu and his propaganda machine. So doubling down. But will this have a profound effect on their ability to operate?
I think it's a huge challenge for Haaretz. It affects not just government advertising, which these sanctions affect. They prevent the government from advertising in those news outlets, but these kinds of sanctions, which we tend to see from authoritarian and anti-democratic regimes worldwide, tend to have a knock-on effect on other advertisers who feel less confident about advertising in those papers or on subscription. So it can have, and is intended to have, a knock-on effect in other areas.
So you'll think there'll be more self-censorship following this?
I don't believe there'll be more self-censorship from Haaretz, but obviously
from other
they may
publications?
face further financial challenges. They have said very clearly that they're going to carry on doing their reporting, and that's absolutely essential. We need those voices. Remember that in addition to the very few voices that we have reporting independently in Israel, we have no international journalists who are able to go into Gaza and report from there. So we're entirely reliant on those Palestinian journalists who continue to report from Gaza. So this is yet another blow, another voice being silenced, or at least attempted to be being silenced.
Do you think it'll have a further chilling effect on other publications?
I think it's inevitable that it will have a chilling effect on individual voices, on other publications. As I say, there are already very few outlets inside Israel who are reporting the war fully. And so this is another voice that we potentially may lose, or certainly we may see more people considering how they cover the war. And that's deeply unfortunate. We need every single voice out there reporting as broadly as possible.